Give praise, esteem, and honor to the Most High Yah by way of Yahushua HaMashiach this day. And we will go to John 5:39, and it says, "Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Abba's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that comes from Elohim only?" So we will go to Exodus chapter 33. We were talking about the covenant a bit last week, and we're going to talk about it some more. Just going to look at it in a different place. 33 and 1 here. 33 and 1. This is after they've made the golden calf, what we're looking at in the 33rd chapter. And we'll begin to see a renewal of the covenant at this point. Reason being, let's slide over here to Exodus chapter 32 first. Let's see what I'm looking for. About verse 15. "And Moses turned and went down from the mountain. The 2 tables of the testimony were in his hand. The tables were written on both their sides, and on the one side, on the other side were they written. And the tables were the work of Elohim, and the writing was the writing of Elohim graven upon the tables. And when Yahushua heard the noise of the people as they shouted," stop, Lizzie. "He said unto Moses, there is a noise of war in the camp. And he said, it is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither is the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hand and brake them beneath the mount." So we see something. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 9. That's old Hebrews 9 and 14. Well, 15, and say, "For this cause is he the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance." So we see right now that they've already transgressed the first covenant. They transgressed it by worshiping idols. And by worshiping an idol, they have violated. See, let's look at something in Deuteronomy 6 and 4 real fast. Let me see, Deuteronomy 6 and 4.
Hey, out of the kitchen. Out of the kitchen.
It says, "Hear all, O Yasharal,
Out of the kitchen.
Yahuah Elohim is one Yahuah. Thou shalt love Yahuah thy Elohim with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart." So we already know that the first thing that they were commanded to do was to have some faith, was to hear with the intent to do. And we know faith come by hearing, and hearing come by the word. Just we're having a conversation with somebody about that, and he was having, I guess, a problem with the epistles of Paul, and I guess him looking at it, there was a contention of faith versus the law. And it's not a contention, but we already know this, that the law doesn't produce faith, but faith does produce obedience to the law. This is without question. This is the thing that people are lacking, of why they have no power with Elohim. None. Hold on, let's think about something, right? Let's go to John chapter 8 and look at the words of Mashiach real quick. Oh, I'm sorry, John chapter 7. We'll look at verse 24. "Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Then said some of them of Jerusalem, Is not this he whom they seek to kill? But lo, he speak boldly, and they say nothing unto him. Do the rulers know indeed that he is the very Mashiach? Howbeit we know this man whence he is, but when Mashiach come, no man know whence he is. Then cried Yahushua in the temple as he taught, saying, You both know me, and you know whence I am, and I am not come of myself, but he that sent me is true, whom you know not. But I know him, for I am from him, and he has sent me. He said they haven't known him. Now we could look at it in the Greek of what it is to know, but he said they hadn't known Elohim. We have to really sit back and look at what it is to know Elohim, and then it to be capable. You'll be capable of keeping his covenant. See, many people, they don't know Elohim. Now the Greek word for know is to perceive with the eyes or by the senses, or to notice or discern or to see or to experience. To get knowledge of. Now we talked about this not too long ago. Well, look at it again just on general principle. Job 42. After that, Psalms 119 and 33. Job 42. We'll look at about verse 4. He says, Here I beseech thee, and I will speak, and I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see thee. He said, I've heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see. We know that faith come by hearing, and hearing come by the word. So to know Elohim, to see him with your eyes, you would have to hear him with your ear, which goes back to that Deuteronomy 6, was the Shama, which is here with the intent to do, which is relating back to faith. We know when they say the law is the truth, thy everlasting righteousness is the truth. It's referring to faith. This is what Elohim has always desired, and this is what they didn't exhibit when they sought to know a golden calf or to know an idol and not know the living Elohim. Let's look at the next thing I mentioned. I already did the Romans 10. Ain't no sense in going to rest. Let's go to Romans 9, though.
Come here, right here.
See, we look at Romans 9 and we look at 30. He said, What shall we say then? That the Gentiles which follow not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. And I think with a lot of brews, this is a lot of contention. And we'll see why it's contention. Deuteronomy 6 and 22. And just hold this in Romans 9. Because they feel like this is a contradiction. But we'll see how it's not a contradiction. It says, And Yahuah showed signs and wonders, great sore upon Mizraim, upon Pharaoh, and upon all his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from thence, that he might bring us in to give us the land which he sware unto our fathers. Yahuah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuah Elohim for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuah Elohim, as he hath commanded us. So this is why a lot of our people look at it, right? Because the law say to be your righteousness if you do this. But the key thing is that you ought to have believed into this man before you even got to this point. Now let's go back to Romans 9, because he says the Gentiles have attained righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. Now we know clear well that the law says that Abraham was deemed righteous because he believed, and it counted it to him for righteousness. So that means we would need to look at a Gentile who was deemed to be righteous because she believed. And let's see one. The book of Joshua. Yahushua, let's look at that. The book of Yahushua, son of Nun. What part do we want to pick it up? Do we want to pick it up? Chapter 2. And we'll pick it up at about verse 2. Well, about verse 1. Yahushua the son of Nun sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, Go view the land, even Jericho. And they went and came into a harlot's house, named Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told the Malach of Jericho, saying, Behold, there come men in hither tonight of the children of Yasharal to search out the country. The Malach of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, Bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thy house, for they be come to search out all the country. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and said, Thus there came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were. And it came to pass about the time of the shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither the men went, I wot not. Pursue after them quickly, for you shall overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them with the stalks of flax, when she had laid in order upon the roof. And the men pursued after them the way of Jordan unto the fords. And as soon as they which pursued after were gone out, they shut the gate. And before they were laid down, she came up unto them upon the roof, and she said unto the men, I know that Yahuah. Now let's pause and let's look at the word for know in Hebrew here. Let's look at that and see what word we get for that. Because she said, I know. She says she knows this. She said, I know that you have given you the land, and that your terror is fall upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. Now she says she know Yahuah has given them the land. Now the word for know in this particular passage is just yada. It's the same thing: to perceive, to acquaint, to be revealed to. We still hold in Psalms 119, 133, and to make oneself known to, or to reveal oneself. Look at the next thing of what she said after this. For we have heard how Yahuah dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Mizraim, what you did unto the 2 Malachs of the Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, and whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our heart did melt. Neither did there remain any courage in any man because of you. For Yahuah your Elohim, he is Elohim in Shamahim above and in Arats beneath. Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by Yahuah, since I have showed you kindness, that you will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token. And that you will save my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. Now this woman says she heard, and therefore she believed. You have to look and pay attention that she heard. So she has attained to a level of righteousness without the law. Let's see why. Hebrews chapter 11. We still hold in Romans 9 and Psalms 119, 133 and Exodus 33. And somehow, some way, it all has to work in together. Hebrews 11 and 1. And then we're going to work our way down. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for the evidence of things not seen. Now we know that in verse 7, also verse 6, it says, without faith it's impossible to please him, and that he that come to Elohim must know that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Now we also know from verse 2 in Hebrews 11, it says the elders obtained a good report of Elohim by faith. This is how they obtained a good report. And let's see who happens to be mentioned in all of these people. Let's look at about verse 29. Say, by faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down, and after they were compassed about 7 days, by faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she received the spies with shalom. Notice it said that she received the spies with shalom, and she did not perish with them that believed not. The master said in John chapter 8 that if you don't believe that I am he, you shall die in your sins. So you know what this is also alluding to? That if the people of Jericho would have had believed the report, if they would have believed the report, that they probably would have been spared. It's the same thing you see in Nineveh. Those people heard the preaching and were spared. No law was administered unto them at this time. There was no law given to Rahab to justify her as being righteous. She believed in Elohim. Now let's go back to Yahushua chapter 2 and let's see what ends up happening to her. Oh, that passage is not in that particular part. What I'm thinking about. Let me find out what it is I'm looking for. Oh, that was in another place. You know, Rahab ended up dwelling in the land forever after that. She became an inheritor of the promise, just like we were, because she believed. Of course, did she get taught the law and keep it afterwards? Absolutely. But she was not deemed righteous before Elohim because of any law, because she didn't have any. She believed by the word of faith, which sets up the believing and justification by faith that we see Paul write, because there's instances of this. Come on back to Romans chapter 9, though. We're in verse 31. He said, but Yasharah, which followed after the Torah of righteousness, have not attained to the Torah of righteousness. So we already seen, we seeking Deuteronomy 6 and 25. It say the Gentiles were really seeking Genesis 15 and 6. He said, wherefore, because they sought it not by faith, and that's the problem. See, that's the key thing that messes all up, is we seeking the law, but we ain't seeking it by faith. So he says, but as it were by the works of the Torah, they stumbled at the stumbling stone. Well, he says, so by the works of the Torah, they stumbled at the stumbling stone. How so? Let's see how so. Isaiah chapter 28. Matter of fact, Isaiah chapter 8. And if you look at the key thing too, they had already been given the Torah. Moses was up there getting it on tables of stone. They stumbled at it. That's why you see him throw it down and break it. So therefore a renewal has to be done. I think a lot of brews even overlook the fact that the covenant was renewed in the Old Testament. In the law itself, he had to renew it. He had to make another one because they had already broken it. So there already had something that had to be done to redeem them from the transgressions of the first covenant. This is why Moses offered to make himself the atonement in Exodus 32 to redeem them from that transgression which they had committed. Isaiah 8 and 14. Make it 11. For Yahuah spake thus to me with a strong hand and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying, say ye not a confederacy to all them whom this people shall say a confederacy. Neither fear ye their fear nor be afraid. Sanctify Yahuah of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both houses of Yasharal, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. So let's go back to Matthew chapter 21. So we see that what they were going to stumble at while seeking righteousness by the laws, they was going to stumble at Mashiach. And therefore they would perish. Because he said, if you do not believe that I am he, you will die in your sins. Those people who did not believe that Yahuah was Elohim died in their sins by worshiping that golden calf. I know it's a big contention because, you know, the law is just and good and righteous altogether. But it is not the barometer of righteousness, and it's not the barometer of justification that we want it to be. Because at that point we are removed Mashiach from the equation, which means we have removed the mercy and the loving kindness and the favor of Elohim at that point. Because now you're saying it's like I said, it's reckoned by debt. Like me and the gentleman having a conversation, and he was like, yeah, you know, they trying to make it seem like Abraham ain't keep no laws. And he said it's not the point that we know that Abraham kept the laws. That's not the issue. But everyone, he wanted to overlook the fact that Abraham was a faithful and just man who trusted in Elohim.
Stop running.
What I mentioned while ago. Oh, Matthew 21. And 40. Well, actually 41 or 42. Yahushua saith unto them, did you never read in the scriptures the stone which the builders rejected? The same has become the head of the corner. This is Yahuah's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of Elohim shall be taken from you, and given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. Whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. And when the chief priests and Pharisees had heard these parables, they perceived that he spake of them. And when they sought to lay hands on him, they feared the multitudes, because they took him for a prophet. Now again, the scribes and even our people to this very day, this stone, they're rejecting it. Now that's Psalms 118 he's mentioning. And remember another place to say, bind the sacrifice, which means the ceremonial sacrifice, the festival sacrifice, the feast sacrifice, to bind it. To bind this Passover sacrifice and offer it. And we stumble at it. We stumble at it because we steady thinking that it's this law in and of itself and removing your Elohim from the process. Let's go back to Romans chapter 9. Let's look at verse 33. As it is written, behold, I lie in Zion, a stumbling stone, a rock of offense. Whosoever believe on him shall not be ashamed. And now he's quoting the prophet Isaiah again. Whoever believes on Mashiach will never be ashamed. Because see, now we could drop right down to Romans 10 and keep it going. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer, well, Romans 10 and yeah, it's good, to Elohim for Yasharal is that they might be saved. For I bear them record that they have zeal of Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness, and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of Elohim. For Mashiach is the end of the Torah for righteousness to everyone that believes. Now we already know, we know when he say the end of righteousness, he meaning the purpose of the whole entire law. But let's just make sure, because somebody be smart. That's all he meaning. This is the purpose of the whole law. Hello? Hello? Hello. So that word telos, to the end of which things relate or aim or purpose. So the aim or the purpose of the law was to show you Mashiach. Not that ends the law, nothing else. We already know this. But what we're looking at is the difference. The difference. We see that Rahab knew no law whatsoever, and she was justified because she heard all. What we were going to get was in Psalms 119 and 33 was, open my eyes that I might behold wondrous things out of thy Torah. But the only way your eyes can be opened is if your ears have been opened. And then that takes us back to Deuteronomy 6 and 4, which is to hear, O Yasharal Yahuah your Elohim is one. And faith come by hearing, and hearing come by the word. I find it ironic that an individual would even think that Paul's letters was a battle between faith versus the law. That if you adjust, you're gonna live by your faith. So your faith is gonna cause you to keep the law. But I just honestly, sincerely believe, as our master has already stated in the 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy in the 20th verse, that these are people in whom have no faith, nor are they steadfast in the covenant of their Elohim, nor do they trust nor believe in his salvation. This is why they want to lean so heavily upon the law and the law alone, because they do not trust in Elohim. They do not trust in his salvation, nor do they want to be a partaker of it. Nevertheless, back to Exodus chapter 33. Because we looked at it last week in Exodus 24 of the establishing of the covenant. So now we're looking at Exodus 33 where the covenant had to be renewed because the people broke it. And as I mentioned in verse 30 of Exodus 32, Moses offered himself to be the redemption of the transgressions under this covenant. He offered his life in order to renew this covenant. This is what dudes don't even realize, is that when Moses threw those 2 tables of stone down, that first covenant was broken and they had to be purchased from it. If we just go by chapters, 8 chapters later, you had to be purchased from under the covenant because you broke it. Because you broke it. And there was no atonement made to purchase it back. To purchase those transgressions back. See, these dudes overlook this, but they such law experts. This has to be done. This has to be done. That covenant was broken. In the 32nd chapter of Exodus, the covenant is broken. Therefore, if there's transgressions, which means some manner of blood, something has to die in order to buy the people back from the transgressions under this covenant, which has now been broken. That is the reason why we went and even looked at how you were purchased to get into the covenant in the first place. With the covenant, see, nobody ever look at that the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Nobody died. Nobody died. Even when you look at the covenant that Yah made with David to put Solomon as a king on the throne, that baby that Bathsheba carried died, and then he made that covenant with him, and Solomon became king. Listen, do you have to use the bathroom? Do you have to use the bathroom? Then go use the bathroom. Exodus 33 and verse 1. Yahuah said unto Moses, depart and go up thence, thou and the people which thou hast brought up out of the land of Mizraim unto the land which I swear unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, unto thy seed will I give it, and I will send a Malachim before thee, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzites, the Hivite, and the Jebusites, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not go up in the midst of thee, for thou art a stiff-necked people, lest I consume thee in the way. And when the people heard these evil tidings, they mourned, and no man did put on his ornaments. Notice that Yahuah said, I can't even go up in the midst of you, because if I go up in the midst of you, I'm going to kill all of y'all. You know what I'm saying? Now, they hadn't received law. They hadn't even got all of the law. But the one that put no other gods before me and bow down and worship no other God aside me, they had already broken that. You think for the righteousness of faith which brought them out of Mizraim, that it would have been nothing for them to obey. They had already been disobeying the man when they were going out there in the field looking for the manna, but they hadn't transgressed the covenant. They had already sized the man for crying for water in Exodus 17, but they hadn't transgressed the covenant. But the minute they made that golden calf, they had transgressed the covenant. This is why he threw it down and broke it. Because now somebody has to die to redeem you from what's up under this. Because this man wants to kill everybody. And he just pushed it off. And pushed it off. See, people don't even pay attention to the mercy that he did, because he kept pushing it off and pushing it off. Because his law say you got to die. Verse 5 though. For Yahuah said unto Moses, say unto the children of Yasharal, ye are a stiff-necked people. I will come up into the midst of thee in a moment and consume thee. Therefore now put off thy ornaments from thee, that I may know what to do unto thee. And the children of Yasharal stripped themselves of their ornaments by the Mount Orab. Moses took the tabernacle and pitched it without the camp or far from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of the congregation. It came to pass that every one which sought Yahuah went out unto the tabernacle of the congregation, which was without the camp. Notice that it said that everyone who sought Yahuah went to this tabernacle. Now let's pay attention to that. And what is he trying to tell us with that? Now we already know the tabernacle is the house. Or the tent, but we also know congregation is used in reference to what? The body of Mashiach. What in contemporary terms now, they just like to say is church. But this is a tent of meaning. It's moed, or appointed time, or set time. But you know, it's a tent of meaning, or an assembly, or a gathering. But it said everyone who sought Yahuah went out to this tabernacle of congregation. Everyone who sought him. And you know what word it is there for salt? It's the good old baqash, and that's the sacrifice to enter into the house. But they said they went outside the camp to do it. Well, let's see why they went outside the camp to do it. First and foremost, Hebrews chapter 13. So everybody, you got to sit back and look at it. Y'all say, if I come up in the midst of all these people, I'm going to kill them all. But it said only a certain amount of the people. You got to pay attention to that. Only a certain amount of the people. Say he pitched it afar off, and it said everyone who sought Yahuah went out unto the tabernacle of the congregation, because he pitched it outside the camp. Because if it was inside the camp, it would destroy everything in it. So it would only be for those who genuinely was seeking Yahuah or genuinely willing to sacrifice themselves for the living Elohim, who truly believed in him, who would go outside of that camp to go before his face. We're in Hebrews chapter 13. I think we want to pick it up out about verse 8. It says, Yahushua HaMashiach, the same yesterday and today and forever. Be not carried about with diverse and strange doctrines, for it is a good thing that the heart be established with favor and not with meats, which have not profited them that have been occupied therein. And remember, that's another place, and this is slipping with my head, where he say, he can discern the same way you can discern the taste of meat. So when he's saying with meats, it's the things, it's the words or the teachings of people. People get, so I just had this conversation with y'all last week and telling Brandon that if people's souls is not saved, what good is it to talk about a doctrine if the earth is flat around? What profit is that to a man's soul? It's not diminishing the topic. It's having your priorities and your perspective on point.
Hey, there's chicken bathroom.
What is the purpose of these things that we argue about? What is the purpose of arguing about, is America Babylon or not? This is not establishing a man's heart with favor. Meaning that you understand that Yahuah has made a sacrifice for you of which he did not have to make. Paul had already told you in Ephesians chapter 2, by favor you are saved. The father of John the Baptist prophesied the same thing, that you have visited and redeemed your people. He brought you back from the transgressions that were under this covenant, of which somebody had to die in order to be purchased. Somebody has to die to buy these transgressions. Just like the firstborn of the Egyptians and that firstborn lamb died to buy you back from those transgressions, somebody has to die to buy you back. And them 3,000 people who fell down and died at the hands of the sons of Levi don't cut it, because they're not the mediator of that covenant. Somebody has to mediate that covenant to purchase you back. He said, we have an altar where they have no right to eat, which serve the tabernacle. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned without the camp. Wherefore Yahushua also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Let us go forth therefore unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach. These same people that we read in Exodus 33 who are going outside the camp to go to the tabernacle of the congregation were bearing their dishonor for worshiping this golden calf. And they were willing to humble themselves and come before Allah. This is what they did right here. Hold on, let's read verse 14 before I pick this next part up. He said, for we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come. By him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice to praise to Elohim continually, that is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. But to do good and to communicate, forget not, for with such sacrifices, Elohim is well pleased. So we notice that the level of faith that we possess will manifest the level of sacrifices that we will execute. Whether it's offering your body as a living sacrifice, whether it's offering the sacrifice of praise, which we can read in the book of Psalms about the sacrifice of thanksgiving and the sacrifice of praise. But he also talking about the sacrifices of doing good and to communicate, forget not. What is to do good? What is good but to obey this man's laws, which is if you had the ability to execute his faith, if you had the level of faith that we ought to have, then that is nothing to do. Nevertheless, Luke 18. We want 18 and 14, 13. It's saying the publican standing afar off would not lift up so much as his eyes unto Shamahim, but smote upon his breast, saying, Elohim, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, but he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. So when we see all of those people, because these people were mourning. Again, this is another thing where it say, blessed are those that are mourn, for they will be comforted. These people were mourning because Elohim's wrath had been proposed to have been dropped upon their head. They had to strip themselves of their ornaments and all of the things that they had adorned themselves and the gifts that he had given them. And they had to come before him humble. And it said those who were seeking him, or those who were willing to sacrifice themselves to enter into the house, which is why again we represent those sacrifices of praise and the sacrifices of doing good and to communicate, to forget not, because they were trying to get in that house, into that tabernacle of the congregation, into that set apart tent, that set apart household. So they were willing to go outside the camp to do so. They were willing to separate themselves from the filth and dishonor that was inside the camp and been able to do this. So that means that we have to sit back and look at it. In order to renew the covenant, you have to go outside the camp. And you have to suffer the reproach of the dishonor that Mashiach suffered, because he was sacrificed outside the camp. And we don't never consider these things, or how faith and sacrifice, all of these things were called for a separation. If we seek to be a part of this covenant that has been renewed, because it was renewed because we broke it. We broke it because we were idolatrous and we were unbelieving. There's nowhere in the world you make a golden calf and say, "Here, O Israel, here is Yahuah your Elohim, which brought you up out of the land of Mizraim," pointing to a calf that you made with your own ornaments. So quickly, as soon as Moses had been gone for a period of time that they felt was entirely too long, they decided that, I don't remember the firstborn of Egypt dying. I don't remember the locust. I don't remember it going dark. I don't remember the firstborn dying. I don't remember the Red Sea parting. I don't remember the manna coming down from Shamahim. I don't remember any of this. Which means I didn't believe any of it. Which is the reason why I wasn't even able to stay steadfast in obedience to him while I waited on his redemption, on his reward, on his revelation. I couldn't wait because I didn't trust it. And you can see that with any amount of people, that when they go to sinning and doing this, that, there, and the third, it's because they can't wait, because they don't trust him, because it's not coming in a time period that they feel is sufficient for them. You didn't, and again, we looked at them prisons. You didn't see Joseph do that in the prison, trying to make something happen on his own because Yahuah ain't coming to get me out of here fast enough. You seen that when Yahushua can call for 12 legions of Malachim, but I will not. How will the scripture be fulfilled? My Elohim is just. He has told me he will not suffer my soul to see corruption or to leave my soul in hell. I know this. So I will wait for it. I will wait for it. Men don't want to wait because they don't trust Elohim, and that's their problem. Nevertheless, back to Exodus 33. I've said it before. I'm going to start believing this. Anything that is of Elohim that you wait for will be infinitely better. There's not a numerical number that you could place upon it. Stop messing. That's why that dog be biting y'all. There's not a numerical number that you could put upon it to be able to even quantify how much better what Yahuah will give you if you wait for him than if you try to do it yourself. Because if it's of man, it's going to fail. If it's Yahuah, it's going to last, and it's going to be an everlasting thing on top of that. In Exodus 33. Verse 7, now we're in verse 8. And it came to pass when Moses went out unto the tabernacle, that all the people rose up and stood every man at his tent door, and looked after Moses until he was gone into the tabernacle. And it came to pass as Moses entered into the tabernacle, the cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and Yahuah talked to Moses. Talked with Moses. And all the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose up and worshiped, every man in his tent door. Yahuah spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speak unto his friend. And he turned again into the camp, but his servant Yahushua the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle. And Moses said unto Yahuah, see thou say unto me, bring up this people. Thou hast not let me know what thou wilt send with me. Yet thou hast said, I know thee by thy name, and thou hast also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray thee, if I found grace in thy sight, show me now thy way, that I may know thee, that I might find grace in thy sight, and consider that this nation is thy people. And he said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. And he said unto him, if thy presence go not with me, carry us not up hence. For wherein shall it be known, here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Is it not in that thou go with us? So shall we be separated, I and thy people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth. Now this man just sat back and said, how do we know that Yahuah goes with us and that we found grace in his sight, but that we be separated from all the people that are upon the face of the earth? Now, those are heavy things that he just mentioned. And he also mentioned that if he found grace in his sight, that we would know him. Now, again, we started off at the beginning dealing with, how the eye has seen. Therefore, the ear has heard. Therefore, the eye see. Therefore, you could actually know Yahuah. But then he says, it's this grace that will separate you. So now we have to look at that. We have to pay attention to that. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. And also looking at the things as he's pertaining to knowing him. Because a lot of people scream that they know Yahuah, but do they really know him? People get up every day and scream about how much they know Yahuah, but do they really know him? Do they know the things that he delights in or the things that he finds pleasing? Or do men just want to glory in the law as if they know Yahuah, but in reality they do not? I know I mentioned something else, but go to Jeremiah 22. I'll do it in the reverse. 22 and 13. Let's do it in the reverse. Jeremiah 22 and 13. Woe unto him that build his house by unrighteousness and his chambers by wrong, that use his neighbor's service without wages and give him not for his work. Now we know that in our law, but just for y'all can know it, so you could check it for yourself in Leviticus 19 and 13. So you can know eventually y'all will and go back over it again. You can't hire nobody to do no work and not pay them. That is a transgression. It's a lot of dudes that in our people very, very well violate that ordinance by having dudes do work and not paying them for it. He said that's to do wrong to do this. So you're using a man's service, you don't want to pay him for it. The reason why we know that's not just is we know that Issachar means Elohim is giving me my hire. And he gave Mashiach his hire for his labor, for his service, which was an eternal kingdom. And rule over man and beast. And victory over death. That we will be able to be a partaker in if we serve him. He will not hold back those wages. He told you it's not a vain thing for you. There's a reward for you for serving Yahuah. You will be paid for it. He told you that in Revelation 14 and 13. He said your works do follow you. Anybody who died in Yahuah, your works do follow you. He's going to reward you for what you've done. If you say this, he said, matter of fact, hold this here. Look at Hebrew chapter 5. Chapter 5, I want to say. It might be chapter 6. Hebrew 6 is what it is. Hebrew chapter 6, where is it at? Verse 9. Yeah, verse 9. Hebrews 6 and 9. But beloved, we are persuaded better things of you, and the things that accompany salvation, though we thus speak. For Elohim is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love, which you have showed towards his name, and that you have ministered to the Kadeshim, and do minister. And we desire that every one of you do show the same diligence to the full assurance of hope unto the end, and that you be not slothful, but followers of them who through faith and patience inherit the promises. Now we know minister means to serve, not just necessarily to preach. Because remember he said to do well and to communicate, to do good and to communicate, forget not. Don't forget those sacrifices. So if you know Elohim, then you would do service, because Elohim is going to pay, or you'll pay someone for doing the service, because Elohim is going to pay you for your service, because he said he will not forget your labor of love which you have showed towards his name. Verse 14 in Jeremiah 22. He said that saith, I will build me a wide house and large chambers, and cut him out windows, and it is sealed with cedar and painted with vermilion. Shalt thou reign because thou clothe thyself in cedar? Did not thy fathers eat and drink and do judgment and justice, and then it was well with them? He judged the cause of the poor and needy, then it was well with him. Was not this to know me, saith Yahuah? He say to judge the cause of the poor and needy was to know him. So that means we'll need to look at something real fast in Jeremiah. When we look at the word cause, it's simply din and it's simply judgment. So you have to sit back and look at it. Are we doing judgment for the humble so we can be well with him? Because a lot of people, because the reason why I say this here is Malachi chapter 3. Look at Malachi chapter 3. This is the reason why I mention this. Where's the verse I want? Oh, verse 13. Yeah, Malachi 3 and 13. Malachi 3 and 13. And the reason why I'm mentioning this here, because especially it's that meme I ran across earlier today with that particular verse in Proverbs to go right along with this. And we didn't read the part where with the Pharisee talking about how just and right he was and how he felt about himself. But we know that in Proverbs 17 and 15 to tell you that if anybody justify the wicked and condemn the just, they're an abomination to Yahuah. Because see, if a man would know Yahuah, then he would judge the cause of the humble man and justify him versus justifying a wicked man. And it's funny because I just had this conversation. You know what I'm saying? That people justify wicked people. They never hear whole things of a matter. They will automatically go with someone who they know is wicked and who they know is sour and justify them and condemn the just party in the matter. And we scream that we know Yahuah. Because the first thing that we like to scream is that 1 John 2 and 4. If we don't keep his commandments and say that we know him, then we are a liar and the truth is not in us. We know truth for us would mean that faith is not in us. Ain't no way in the world you believe in Elohim and you don't keep his commandments. That's what he's telling you. But that conversely, if we look at the things in the law of what the law instructs us to do, the law does instruct us to judge righteously. The law instructs us to have a just weight and a just balance. The law instructs us to fear Yahuah. The law instructs us to never justify the righteous over the wicked. See, when you hear dudes always scream about the law, they don't scream about any of these other things that pertain to your conduct and your character. It's always about eating pork and keeping Sabbaths and feast days. Things that are simple for them to do versus the things that are real, which are the elements of your character, the elements of your discernment, and the elements of your judgment and how just of an individual you are. Because if you're a just individual, you're going to side on the side of which is correct and not the side of an individual.
Hey.
If you see a poor and humble man being oppressed, you're gonna exercise judgment on his behalf. But what do we like to do? We like to argue about doctrines and argue about names and argue about this, that, there, and the third. And judgment is not being executed. Righteous people are being trampled over, while the wicked are continually uplifted daily, and men love it. You know what I'm saying? So why people seek to wicked, lukewarm, backsliding, half-hearted, faithless individuals. Nevertheless, Malachi 3 and 13. Your words have been stopped against me, saith Yahuah. Yet you say, what have we spoken so much against thee? You have said it is vain to serve Elohim. And what profit is it that we have kept his ordinance, and we have walked mournfully before Yahuah of hosts? And now we call the proud Baruch. Yea, they that work wickedness are set up. Yea, they that tempt Elohim are even delivered. We'll sit back and say people who work wickedness are set up by Elohim. And that people who work wickedness, that people who tempt Elohim, he even saves them. That's a sick minded, that's a sick, twisted individual. And that's the state of our people at this very moment in time. This is one of the reasons why they didn't know Mashiach, which y'all will, and we'll get into that more this week, and hopefully can weave some of the prison stuff in it that we got. This is one of the reasons why they didn't know Elohim. Because they didn't know the scriptures, because they did not believe in them. They heard them, but they did not hear. They had ears, but they could not hear. Because they didn't have any intent on doing it, because they never believed it in the first place. Which is that's why he said the gospel was preached unto them as well as unto us, but did not profit them, not being mixed in the faith of them that heard it. Because at the end of the day, people don't really believe. You know what I'm saying? They don't really believe. And that's why they lean on the law so much, because they feel like that'll get them that justification. Because to be a prisoner of hope, and we talked about in that word, prisoner being a saw, which is meaning the head is your support, which I had verses for that tonight, but I don't have time to get to it because it's 8:38. But we'll look at some of the people y'all willing this week who were in prison, and y'all was their support. He supported them. He held them while they were there. We mentioned them last week, but we're going to look at them though, because they were prisoners of hope. You just sit back and look at it. They were a prisoner to being supported by Elohim, to being lifted up by Elohim. This is why he say you being built upon a chief cornerstone, because that cornerstone is what supports the whole house.
Problem. Come here.
Ephesians chapter 2 verse 5. We can make it 1. I find it funny that, and this is just my personal opinion, and if anybody disagrees, you can surely say so from your experiences. But from what I'm noticing in my short time period dealing with the work, I know most of y'all been dealing with it your whole life, irregardless of whether you in the Christian church or not. It doesn't make no difference. You were dealing with it. Whether you were dealing with it correctly or incorrectly is neither here nor there. Most of you were probably reading it, hearing it being preached, hearing it being read, participating in things, and this, that, there, and the third. But what I noticed is that Hebrews like to mess with Christians about their proclaiming of faith, but their disregarding of the law. That's all Christians want to talk about is faith and toss away the law. Yet they don't really believe, nor are they keeping the law. And then I find it funny that Hebrews want to uplift the law and toss away faith as if it means nothing. Move. But yet in reality, they're not keeping the law because they don't believe in Elohim. Have you ever noticed the people who always scream the law, they always seem to be partial with it 99.9% of the time. So we only got 1% that may not, 0.1% that may not, but they're always partial. And I can remember a man, he was telling the woman about, you got to keep the law, you got to keep the law. And then he told this woman, but I'm not perfect. And that woman said, well, you don't keep the law then. Now, it was hilarious, just on the simple fact of, this woman is sitting back looking at, you're pushing and impressing upon me to do something that you can't even do yourself. Because you really trust in yourself. This is why I say you're going about to establish your own righteousness, and you have not submitted yourself unto the righteousness of Elohim, which is what the scribes did during the time of Mashiach. This is what they were doing. I had a gentleman yesterday tell me, or whatever day it was, he said Paul was a hurt man. He said the Pharisees did a number on him. He was hurt. He was wounded. And I find that to be very, very funny, because number one, the story of this man don't even say that. And this man was riding with the Pharisees all the way up until Mashiach revealed himself to him. If Mashiach would have never revealed himself to Paul, Paul still would have been rolling with these dudes. I'm like, where do you get that this man has been hurt and wounded? What you think, the people molested him or something? Beat on him or something? Picked on him? The stuff that people say, it amazes me. Ephesians 2:1. He said, you have quickened, and you have he quickened, who were dead in trespasses and sins, wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world. And that's what we did when we were in Egypt. We walked according to the course of the world, of the society that we were a part of at that time. The same way that we walked around as a part of being in America, doing is what you knew in the place where you were at that time. That's why I tell y'all, I don't get offended when people say Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving, or none of that. Ben stopped getting offended about it, because these people don't know. They don't know. They don't know what you own. people automatically assume that you doing what they doing in the place where you dwell. And if you sit back and think about it, when you were in it and you were keeping Christmas and Thanksgiving, you would have automatically assumed everybody did it too. Because everyone around you who you dealt with and who you came in contact with participated in it. So human nature is going to automatically click and think that that's what you do. Unless they can look at you and see that you're from a different culture. That they know don't participate in that. Don't nobody know nothing about you being no brew or knowing you know Israelite. They don't know nothing about you don't do that. So they're just going to say Merry Christmas out of habit. You have to have enough understanding to know that. Because you were once in their shoes. Banded about doing the same thing. Getting ready like I'm finna go to such and such house. We're going to eat. We're going to open these gifts. And all this nonsense that we all were banded about in while when we didn't know no better. He said, where in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the Ruach that now work in the children of disobedience, who among also we had all our behavior in times past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But Elohim, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, have quickened us together with Mashiach. By favor you are saved, and have raised us up together, and made us sit together in heavenly places in Yahushua HaMashiach. So if we was to take back and just ponder, and just let Exodus 33, the words that Moses was speaking, just let them sit in our minds. That he said that he would bring this people, and that thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me, but said, I know thee by name, and thou hast find favor in thy sight. And remember, Mashiach say, my sheep know my voice, and I call them by name. I had a conversation with a brother yesterday, and I told Snake straight up and down, that if I know your government name, I'm not calling you by whatever Hebrew name you give yourself. I'm not calling you that. You know what I'm saying? If I know your government name, I'm not calling you that. You know what I'm saying? Because you gave yourself that name. Now we know the text says Mashiach will give a man a name which no man knows except the man who he gave it to. So you got to ask yourself, before you were ever born, Yahuah already knew what name your people were going to give you. He already knew what name your people were going to give you. Now I've told people this, and you know, I'll probably ask everybody this again when we all in person. Most of us have probably heard our name called, and you went to your people and said, did you just call me? And they were like, no, I ain't call you. The same thing that we seen with Samuel. That he was calling Samuel by name. Samuel running in there to Eli. Hey, you called me? Like, no, I ain't call you. And then Eli proceeded, it was Yahuah calling him. So you can give yourself whatever name you want to give yourself. But if Yahuah going to be calling you by the name that you were given versus the name you gave yourself, then you ain't going to hear him when he called. Because you thinking, oh, this is my slave name. Stop biting. He goes, oh, that's my slave name. He gonna call me by my Hebrew name. Nigga, who told you that? Where did you get that from? That's a figment of your own imagination. That's what you want to believe. That's what you want to convince yourself to believe. But that man say he called you by name. But people gave Moses that name. Moses ain't had nothing to do with that. You didn't see Daniel them screaming and hollering about don't call me Belshazzar. He could care less. He didn't sit back and look at my name. Your name does not define your service to your Elohim. Whatever name, whatever nomenclature you go by, that doesn't define you. Not your service to Elohim. The clothes that you wear, that doesn't define your service to Elohim. That doesn't define any of that. It's the things that's in your heart. Do you know him? Do you understand what it means to know him? Which y'all will, of course, we'll be looking at through the course of this week. Do we understand what it is to know him? One thing we able to pinpoint tonight was it is to be able to judge the cause of the poor and needy, to be able to judge righteously for a humble person, which can lead to many other different things. If if two people are standing there, are you going to judge accordingly to what is right? If the needy or humble person is being oppressed, will you stand up and execute judgment on their behalf by condemning the unjust party? Because he said that in Isaiah. He said there was no judgment and it displeased him. Nobody stood up in the gap to defend those who ought to be defended. Nobody stood up to defend Mashiach but Pilate's wife. Ain't that sad that nobody stood up to defend this man but Pilate's wife? Not a single solitary Hebrew on the scene stood up to judge his cause. Not one. Not one. The only person who stood up and said anything was Pilate's wife. Because Pilate was just going to sit there and do nothing. Pilate's wife come up and say, leave this just man alone. I suffered many things in a dream because of it, which caused him to consider. But he didn't plead or judge for his cause. He just tried to pass the buck onto somebody else, the way he wouldn't have to be responsible to make that judgment. And that's what a lot of people do. They don't want to be the one responsible to make the judgment and to stand up and plead on the behalf of the oppressed and of the humble and of the needy. They want to pass it on to somebody else. I have consistently seen wicked men justify other wicked men. It is outright despicable. All in the name of justifying their behavior. Justifying whatever nefarious plan they got cocked up and schemed. It's ridiculous. This is why we can firmly say that we're a faithless, unbelieving people. Because we will not stand up on the side of what is right. Because niggas always think people standing up for people they down with or who they cool with. That's respecting of persons is a sin that a man ought to go to hell for. Ain't no friendship worth going to hell for. You got to go for what's right. Some of y'all can know it been situations. A nigga come to me and say this person did this. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. And then I'm going to sit back and I'm going to ask the person who you accused that of, is this the case? Because what you thought I was just going to believe that nigga because you said that's what that person did? Or you said that's what that person said? That's not sufficient. Nevertheless. Now he said when we see that we find that favor in his sight and that he go with us, it'll cause us to be separated. So let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Yes, Abigail. And then probably John 15. 6 and 17 in 2 Corinthians chapter 6. So if Yahuah going to go with us, this going to cause a separation. So if you want that man Ruach HaKadosh in you, then that's going to have to cause a separation that he go with you. For him to go with you, he's got to be in you and you got to be in him. We'll make it verse 16.
It's done. Go put it in the
And what agreement have the temple of Elohim with idols? For ye are the temple of the living Elohim, as Elohim have said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Hey, stop coming up here.
Pablo, let's go.
Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith Yahuah, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you.
Let's go.
And I will be Abba unto you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, saith Yahuah Almighty. Notice that he said that if you separate yourself and you don't have any agreement with idols, then he will walk in you, and he will be your Elohim, and you will be his people. So what does it come down to? For him to go with you, there has to be a separation. Nevertheless, I mentioned something. What was it? Oh, John 15. Yeah. You better get a hold of these. Sit down. This is not playtime. Sit down somewhere. And after that, John 17, and we'll pause for the evening, man. That's 10 minutes to 9 minutes to 9. That's picture?
Yeah.
Pretty.
I put something because you can see it.
John chapter 15, right?
Uncle, look.
Verse 16. Quiet. I don't want to hear that. Go sit down. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain. That whatsoever you shall ask of Abba in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, that you love one another. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. And if you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but because I've chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hate you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his master. And if they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. And if they've kept my saying, they will keep yours also. Notice that what he said, that if they keep his saying, that they'll say that they'll keep the words that his apostles would preach. So we can sit back and see that when people actually turn around. Let me put it this way. When you see people and you're dealing with a Kadesh and clean teaching, and you're dealing with the manifestation of the mystery of Elohim by the revelation of the Besorah of Yahushua HaMashiach, those who were already keeping Mashiach sayings will keep your sayings also. Those who were not keeping those sayings will reject you and begin to despise you. And this goes about that if he goes with you, then that will cause a separation. If his favor is upon you, which is the blood of Mashiach, which is the Ruach of Mashiach by his burial and resurrection, this will cause a separation from you and other people. This is what Moses stated in the law. So it's got to go down. It's in the Torah. People overlook this. For Yahuah to go with you, it's going to cause you to have to be separated. For his grace to be with you, it's going to cause you to have to be separated. He said he set you up with heavenly things in Yahushua HaMashiach. That's why he said you are from beneath and I am from above. That which is flesh, and that which is Ruach is Ruach. The flesh is not subject to the Torah of Elohim, neither indeed can be. There has to be a separation. The law has already mandated it. And if you know Elohim, and you seek to get that renewal of that covenant, of that grace, then it's going to cause that separation because the Ruach HaKadosh will abide on you. Nevertheless, we'll complete at John 17 and verse 23. And y'all willing, we pick it up on the Shabbat. I in them and thou in me, that thou may be made perfect in one, that the world may know that thou hast sent me and hast loved them as thou hast loved me. Abba, calm down, Gail. I will that they also whom thou hast given me be with me where I am, that they may behold my esteem which thou hast given me, for thou loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, the world have not known thee, but I have known thee, and these have known that thou hast sent me. So remember, to know is to understand and to perceive, or to have him revealed. And that's what we'll be dealing with, y'all willing, on the Shabbat, when we have an extended period of more time to deal with what it is to know him. To know him is to see him, and to see him is to hear him. To hear him is to believe him. To believe him is to know his word. He says, seek you out the book of Yahuah and read. He told you to search the scriptures, but in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. He said, if you haven't believed Moses' writings, how should you believe my words? Because if they would have kept Moses' sayings, they would have kept Yahushua's also. It's no different. And they would have known him, because they would have already known the Father, because they would have already been obeying Deuteronomy 6 and 4 by hearing. And by hearing they would have believed, and by believing they would have obeyed, and therefore the covenant wouldn't even have to been renewed. Therefore there would not even have to been a redemption from the transgressions that were on it, because there would have been no transgressions. So Yahuah willing, that is our mission on the Shabbat, which is to deal with what it is to know him, and to also continually pinpoint the violations of the transgressions under that covenant. The idol worship of Exodus 32 was just a verse violation, but we know that there were many more. So hallelujah for Yahushua and the word, and we will